Hey, what's going on, guys? Kalamazi here. Season 4 is, I would assume, somewhere in the relatively near future. My guess is like, I don't know, a month and a half-ish, probably like early August at the latest away. And today, I want to take some time to talk to you guys about Season 4 BIS gearing for Warlock. There's a bit of like general, maybe general-ish caster information in here, but I wanted to run Affliction Demo Destro profiles for S4 and try and find the best gear outputs. And when I dove into this, there's actually a lot of things in here that are pretty interesting. There's a pretty set in stone gearing profile just based off having 3 raids and final bosses having higher eye level plus new dungeons, Mechagon, things like that. So all those questions today hopefully should indeed be answered. There are a few things like legendaries, which we're not sure on yet. Blizzard hasn't really clarified on that or mentioned what's going to happen with them, but I just bumped the eye level up comparatively to what it is in 9.3 or 9.2. And we'll go from there. Now, I'll place links to all the sims that you see in this video down in the actual description below. All the profiles should be in there if you know where to find them at. And if you guys see any errors or anything in the sims, I don't think there are, but I've run a million of them. I had to make a million different profiles, and I'm sure things will change. So we'll make an updated list at some point. But if there's any issues, drop them in the comment section, and I'll try and get them fixed for, you know, a video in the near future. To a similar extent, any weak ORS add-ons or profiles in this video like they require, links all down below to my Twitch, where you can swing by and grab them for free, hang out, answer any questions anytime. Feel free to do so. One big shout out to my patrons as well before we get into the video. Thank you a million times, guys, for all support on Patreon. If you're looking at supporting on Patreon, there should be a link up here as well as down in the video description below. Oh, and I also forgot to mention that, so I did indeed add Changeling, Ruby, Cube, and one other dungeon base, Ooze, into this video, into the trinket sections at 304 eye level. Now, off the bat, they should be 298 in these sims because you're not able to get these items from the Great Vault at all, as far as I know, in Season 4, because there's no Shadowlands dungeons a part of the actual circuit, Mythic Plus, barring Tanzavesh. Now, they are currently on PTR obtainable from Mythic Zeros, which, if you get them, you can currently put 12 Valor upgrades into them and get them at a, you know, whatever a 272 equivalent eye level is in Season 4. So I put them into this sim, number 1, to see where their raw value is, to see if like they were ahead by a crazy amount and worth farming up, Mythic 0 if it goes live like that. And number 2, to compare them to Hymnals and Shadowed Over Torments and Ocular Glands and FNTs and even WAD-based trinkets, because like we have a baseline. It gives you a better baseline idea of how good this trinket is, right? For example, we know Hymnal is probably going to be pretty good. We talked about it. We've talked about it a lot on stream. We've looked at sims with it before in the past. It was very good in 9.0, and it typically beat Changeling as your equip-based trinket of choice in most settings. So we haven't had it for a year and a half, right? So having that comparison to look at it, hey, this is Changeling now, or this is what Changeling would be comparatively to what Hymnal would be, I thought was the best idea or the best way to get my point across as far as how relevant and how strong trinkets are. So keep in mind, once again, I talk about it in the video a bunch, when you see the actual trinkets, Changeling, Ruby, Cube, Ooze, they are not obtainable unless you get them from baseline Mythic 0. And one more thing, I forgot to add a socket to the Jailer neck. I added it to the other neck, which is KT neck. I would assume Jailer neck's probably just BIS across the board. I'm not going back and running 30 sims. So with that being said, now let's get into the video. Now, I used a generic profile with just, you know, what I would assume would be the best 2 legendaries for each spec. And then there's more trinket sims, Mechagon ring sims, and things like that, which get more specific. So Demonology, the baseline profile, everything has 4-piece. It accounts for like changing legs to Unity or having to wear legs like Madness, for example, which we'll get to in a minute here. There's 4-piece here. Baseline, this is the actual. We have Tier Helm, right? This neck here is from Kel'Thuzad, 311 eye level. Tier, once again, 311, 311, 311. Keep in mind, 311 is the end tier boss loot of whatever raid you're doing. Once again, you can make a 311 tier helm because Sylvanas helm, right? So we have Cloak. This is from, I believe, Lords of Dread, 311. We have Chest, Rygalon, 311. We have Grim Veiled Bracers. This is Wilfred's for Demo. But you have 311 Bracers from Lords of Dread if you're not playing a Legendary there. Gloves, 311, because Jailer, right? Belt, 311. This is the belt from Kel'Thuzad in SOD. Legs, like we said, they are the one piece that you cannot make a higher eye level, one of the two, that is not at a higher eye level. So it's a great option for Unity if you like to have it. Now, long term, I mean, it could be the end goal to have Unity on legs. Early on, when you're acquiring gear, you're not going to have, you know, every BIS slot filled in. You might move Unity around, might move Wilfred's, whatever class legendary you're playing around. That is what it is. This is more of a long-term BIS gearing list. So these boots here, boots and legs are the 2 items. Boots being number 2, that does not have a higher eye level piece from an end boss in Shadowlands. So boots, I believe these are Terror Group boots. There's a million pairs out there. You can make Unity on these, make Unity here. It's up to you. It might vary a little bit in Sims, but there's a lot of options out there. Now, as far as rings are concerned, I wanted to put Mechagon rings in the Sim, but as an option to Sim. So baseline, I went with Sires and Athreus ring with a socket, and Rygalon ring with a socket. So these are part of the baseline Sim. We'll look at Mechagon rings at the second tier. Trinkets. Everybody's talking about Kabbalah's Hymnal, and for good reason. It was a very strong trinket in the first season of, the first patch of Shadowlands. It beat out Changeling. It beat out most of the equip-based trinkets, even in random Sims I'd run like for fun from time to time. It's a very strong trinket. And if you're in a group with a stacking chorus effect, with a full chorus group, it's an exceptionally strong trinket, right? So I wanted to fill this in as our baseline equip trinket across all the Sims. Shadow over Torment also gained a lot of value for Demo. Still good for Destro, still good for Ath towards the end of last tier going into Sepulchre. That is our baseline on use trinket, and we simmed Entumbra and Forbidden Truth. Now, as far as weapons are concerned, we have both Maledict Opus and potentially the Sire Denathrius weapon, which I believe is supposed to be in, but they haven't implemented the actual weapon on his loot table yet. It's just a token, so we're not sure what's going to happen there. Like, these could become just baseline pieces, like weapons that drop from him, but as of right now, it's a token, so we're not sure what's going to happen there. But regardless, jumping into it. So the first sim here, this is the Demonology sim. This is just like the baseline current top gear sim, 21,564, basically the same as the quick sim here. Playing Wilfred, you can see the gear, 311, 311. The only non-end tier boss piece of loot here is quite literally my Shadowed Orb and my Phantasma Forge Striders. Now, interestingly enough, this sim here is a sim playing every trinket combination, which we can look here. I ran a lot of trinket combinations here. We simmed Hymnal, FNT at 311, Shadowed Orb, Sigil, Elegy, Ocular Gland, IQD, Ruby, Ooze, Changeling, Aran's Relaxing Ruby, Fleshrender's Meat Hook, and Tovra's Lightning Repository. Now, when you actually have a trinket like Hymnal or Solea's or whatever, which is not in the sim, but if you have them and they have an option to change the effects down here, it will add it in the advanced section. So this sim here is with 0 Kabbalist Hymnal players in the party, and the baseline default Unbound Changeling proc, which is like, I think, Haste Mastery or crit, not the big crit Haste Mastery proc. However, I did indeed run sims for those. So the baseline sim here, the highest trinket combination that we have currently is, for Demo, is indeed Hymnal and Shadowed Orb of Torment. Ooze, actually beating out Ooze by about 48 DPS with Orb of Torment. So Hymnal, like we thought, pretty strong, but if you up the Hymnal to 2 people in your party, it's ahead by about 48-ish DPS here. If you up the Hymnal to a 3-player party total, it's ahead by about 162 DPS. So Hymnal gains a lot of value if you have half your party playing Hymnal together. And like we thought, Hymnal looks to be a very strong trinket for casters. That swelling crit effect is exceptionally strong. If you go to a 4-stack on your Hymnal, it is ahead of the Ooze combination by about 256 DPS. Now, in this sim, I also enabled the big triple proc on Changeling being crit haste mastery. I didn't have it enabled for previous sims. It's sort of whatever. If it doesn't beat it in the big sim, it doesn't really matter. But it shows that both Changeling with big proc is still fine, solid, relatively close to Ooze. There's a bit of give and take there. But the big thing is that Hymnal is very strong. It's Hymnal, Orb, Hymnal, Sigil, and then Hymnal, Changeling. Hymnal is just exceptionally strong for Demo, and just with the swelling crit effect that it actually brings. So there's not a whole lot that we missed there. We thought it would be really good, and it does indeed, in early sims, appear to be a very strong trinket. Now, keep in mind, you have 3 options you can take, or you have 3 items you can buy in Season 4. There's a quest to kill 30 bosses. Then, once you finish that quest, you get a token to buy 1 item from any raid. And you get another quest to kill 20 bosses. Kill 20, get a token. A third quest to kill 10, and you get a third token. Once you kill that final 10, there are no tokens left. But you can target 3 items from the raid, whether it's, this thing or a Hymnal. You can just buy it from the vendor and then upgrade it later on with shards you get from killing bosses, right? So, interestingly enough, I depending on sims and where things land, I would not be surprised to see guilds saying, hey, casters, buy a hymnal if you don't get it, because it is exceptionally strong for a lot of specs from what I've heard and seen, even like behind the scenes, people just talking about what's good in S4 for a lot of casters. Now, it might vary because there are some weapons and things too, like Antumbra with the verse proc, with other random effects on items that, you know, don't affect Warlocks as much, which you might look at buying, but hymnal looks to be exceptionally strong for Demo, and you'll see as well Destro and, you know, potentially Aff. So now, as far as ring combinations go, I did indeed sim most Regal Seal, Thanathrius ring, and Rygalon's ring. Now, there is some stat weight variance here and things like that. Eye level typically reigns supreme from end bosses, but there have been times where you've seen a bit of like, I can play a lower eye level ring with or without a socket and get a bit more value out of it, depending on where your own sims lie. However, Mechagon rings are back in 9.25, well, I guess season 4, whatever you want to call it. So here is the Mechagon ring sim for Demonology. Mechagon rings are ahead by about, let's see here, I don't know. Here we go. I mixed the sims up. It's fine. That's what it is. This is the current year sim. Basically, this sim is, let's see, 21784. So basically, we go from 21784, which is pretty much the same here, to 21931. It is a 157 DPS gain, playing the overclocking bit band, which is the baseline, I guess, the amount of haste you get, or the haste ring, paired with the logic loop of recursion, which is whenever you cast 3 different spells on the same target, it gives you that haste proc. So the Mechagon rings do indeed seem to be pretty strong, pretty valuable in Season 4, just due to how strong the actual proc is. And keep in mind, I also sim these against 2 other rings with sockets as well. The sockets in these rings aren't carrying, it's the actual raw value. So this set is definitely worth farming up if possible. And the final overall sim for Demonology, with everything taken into account, trinkets, rings, necks, World Killer Iris did end up beating out the Kel'Thuzad neck by a little bit. Besides that, though, I mean, what I'm saying is, like, the actual gearing you have, so much just appears to be set in stone. It's end boss loot, right? 311, like end boss, end boss, end boss, end boss, end boss. The option of having end boss loot here, end boss, end boss. You can make a legendary here if need be. This is your one item. This is like your one item being boots that is not an end boss piece of gear, but you can still make a legendary on it, whether it's Unity here or here. And if you get lucky, maybe you can double dip on double legendaries here, because once again, bracers can be end boss loot. We can call this end boss because it's better than end boss loot, however you want to word it. Hymnal end boss, Orbis being ridiculous, end boss and end boss. We also ended up sending Maledict Opus against Antumbra here, but Maledict Opus just is not as strong as Antumbra. Antumbra is just really strong with the offhand from Jailer. So Demonology ended up being about 22,151. Not terrible. Let's take a look at Destro. Alrighty, so when it comes to Destro sims, I did indeed run both Madness sims and Wilfred sims, because there are sort of 2 different builds being played in Mythic Plus and in Raiding. I did not play Inferno with Wilfred's. It's fine. It really shouldn't change a whole lot. We know what's good. We know what's bad. So, sort of similar to Demonology. This is the baseline Madness sim, 22150. Now, we are playing Madness on Helm. Madness can go on, I believe, either Helm or Gloves, I'm pretty sure. But Helm is a better option because higher eye level, more main stat, more secondary stat allocation, all that. Helm is where it's going to be. So we have tier shoulders, tier chest, gloves, and yeah, legs. There we go. Now, the thing here, sort of similar to what we saw with Affliction, is that you're just straight up playing a lot of end boss gear. Once again, the only non-end boss piece of gear is Leggings of the Demon Star, because you have to play it. It's for your 4-piece, and it's the one non-end boss piece of tier that you have to play because of your 4-piece. Everything else is end boss gear, right? Now, as far as the build's concerned, once again, we're playing Madness here, Trinket sim. So I did the same thing here. We simmed the entire same list of trinkets. I'll show you briefly here. It's the entire list. Repository, Meat Hook, Aran's Ruby, Changeling, Ooze, Ruby, all this, everything else, right? The results were surprising, but also not very surprising. So this sim here is the baseline default Changeling sim and the 0 party member sim for Hymnal. Now, the highest performing sim is indeed Hymnal and Cube. The baseline sim I ran here was Shadow Torment with Hymnal. And to be fair, a 60 DPS difference is something for sure, but it's not massive. Hymnal, though, once again, just performs very well out of the gate. No surprises there. Crit, obviously being impactful for Destro, just good in general. Very, very strong. Now, if you scroll down more here, you can see things like here's actual Titanic Ocular Gland with Torment. There, if you go further, here's Lightning Repository. Here is Meat Hook somewhere in here. I was a bit disappointed that Meat Hook didn't sim higher. Now, like I mentioned before for Demo, I'm curious if Meat Hook is just going to be tuned differently. Because if you look at like this Ruby, 160 int, 160 int, 171, 160 even from the Tova's Lightning Repository, right? 160. The hook has 107, and while it has a lot of haste on it, there is a bit of that DR from haste, even though it's still good. Intellect is still very, very strong on its own. It has like, I think for me, like 2 times the value or 1 3/4 times the value is haste with Sims, and plus having this much haste does indeed DR a little bit. Still strong effect, but I'm curious if they're going to rework a bit of the raw haste this gives comparatively to the amount of baseline intellect. If they do, this could be a drastic shift in how strong Meat Hook is in Sims compared to where this is now. So it's important to keep that in mind. But the biggest overall winner here, I guess, is still Cube with Hymnal for Madness Destro. Keep in mind also Sigil is in this sim, but it's very close here. These are 5-minute sims. So I ended up running a 6-minute sim at the end to show you where Sigil lands. So 0 party members, 0 Cabal party members, and 0 Changeling, like it's the baseline default Changeling with just haste or whatever it gives you, right? So if you stack it though to 2 party members, it goes up by about 100 DPS, still favoring Hymnal and Cube. The level of disparity here is a bit larger, obviously. It's still like, you still have the same combination of Hymnal Cube, Hymnal Sigil, right? So like there's a 50-60 DPS difference here, a bit more, but it's still Hymnal Sigil, Hymnal Cube. Hymnal just gives so much more value when you have that semi-stacked party. Now, if you go to a fully stacked party, and keep in mind, this fully stacked party sim also, I did turn on the big triple proc for Changeling. I would not advocate playing double equip Trinket here for the most part. Hymnal is still ahead by a very large margin. If you remove the insane triple proc from Changeling, which is hard to get in the first place, on top of the fact that at 304 Changeling is hard to get also, the highest sim here, you're looking at about, let's see here, 22, 187, give or take roughly, favoring Hymnal by a pretty large margin. Now you have your Hymnal Sigil sim here also, but the big thing, I was surprised Sigil was a bit lower, right? But they're 5-minute sims. So you pop Sigil on pull, you pop it basically when the sim ends. If you run a 6-minute sim for this though, Sigil ends up pretty much being your best option here. Once again, we're not going to play double on use, or double equip with Changeling and Hymnal here, right? So your best equip on use option for the 6-minute sim is indeed going to be Hymnal, Sigil, or I guess Changeling, Sigil, however you want to look at it. And there's a bit of variance here, right? But a fully stacked Hymnal party is very, very, very strong. And the fact that you can target a Hymnal once again, guaranteed week 3, or getting it week 1 when the Faded Raid version of Castle Nathria is up, is exceptionally strong. Hymnal looks to be very, very good. And once again, you have Ruby here also. I did indeed include Ruby in these sims because there's the option of, once again, running Mythic Zeros and getting it, upgrading it 12 times. I really don't want to do that, but even with that being said, Shadowed over Torment does indeed seem to be a little better. Now, as far as ring sims are concerned, for Demonology, it was about it was like 160-ish DPS game, I think, 160. Actually, no, about 105, roughly. For Madness Destruction, it is about from what I'm looking at here, a 413 DPS game, which is pretty substantial, but I mean, we knew the Mechagon rings were good, and they are still very good. So just like what we saw for Demonology, Destro wants the Mechagon ring set even more so comparatively. Now, there could be a bit of variance here, obviously, and they're not very easy to acquire, but this is also comparing these 2 rings to a Mythic Sire Denathrius ring and a Mythic Rygolon ring, both with sockets. So the actual Mechagon rings are very, very important to acquire, like I said before, and yeah, there's not much else to that. Sockets are big in them too, obviously, but, you know, maybe you'll get lucky and loot with a hole in it. So the largest overall Destro sim for Madness was 22,812. It has Orb of Torment here and Changeling also, which is a bit surprising over Sigil, but once again, it is a 5-minute sim, not 6. And there's a bit of variance here. Stat weights might have changed a bit with these rings coming in. But the big thing, Hymnal and Changeling are very, very close. This is a baseline Mythic Hymnal with a 4-stack party. This is a hard, high-level Changeling to get with a hard proc to obtain. It's the big triple proc, right? So TLDR Destro, Madness still looks fine on helm, obviously. Unity on belts, or Unity on boots, I'm sorry. Changeling, Hymnal are both solid. Hymnal seems to be just utterly insane, though, still. For Destro, just like Demonology. And Mechagon rings also drive that home. Now, as far as Wilfred's Destro was concerned, the baseline profile, we ended up playing Unity on legs, and we ended up playing Wilfred's on bracers, because we'll get to it later on. The Mechagon ring set, unsurprisingly, shifts you towards playing Wilfred's on bracers, even though you can play Mythic eye level bracers from Lords of Dread, right? So baseline profile here, 5 minute. This is like the 0 party members for Hymnal, baseline default changeling stuff. Off the bat, 5 minute sim, Hymnal, Sigil, bam, just big. Now I will say, like, there's changeling Sigil here again, which is not bad, but Hymnal, just good right off the bat. 2 minute Wilfred's profile, very strong. Sigil, also pretty big. Now there's a Ruby here, once again. If we do indeed get those Mythic 0 dungeons, you're still dropping rubies and changelings, things like that, then hey, you know what? Sure, maybe they're able to be upgraded with 8,000 Valor, you can get there. But it's important to keep in mind, for the 10th time, this changeling is a high eye level. I guess theoretically, even this changeling wouldn't even be this high because you can't get it from the vault anymore. So there's that also. Didn't think about that. I'm not going to redo all these sims, FYI. But yeah, so basically, like, it's cool to see the comparison here with the high changeling versus Hymnal. But Hymnal is just really, really solid, right? The highest changeling you can get would probably be like, I think it'd be 290. I believe with this eye level being the way that it is, it would be 298, because you couldn't get it from the actual vault because there's no Shadowlands dungeons a part of Season 4, barring Tazavesh, right? But if the Mythic Zeros, once again, for the 10th time, do drop these, and they are upgradable to max eye level with Valor, even though it would be 8,000 Valor or whatever, it's still interesting to see where it's at comparatively in Sims. Either way, Hymnal, big off the bat. Sigil, big here. If you go to the next sim here, which factors in a 2-person party, 3 total for Sigil, or for Hymnal, there's even more ground gained here. The disparity is just even larger. You have Hymnal, Sigil, Hymnal Cube, Hymnal Ruby, and if you go to the big full party group with Hymnal, you have Hymnal ahead by a lot more. And once again, I did indeed add the changeling proc and big tri proc, but if you exclude that, because like we can't really get it either way, like we said, the big thing here, Hymnal, Sigil ahead by just a substantial amount. It's ahead by 100 DPS over the next Hymnal Ruby, Hymnal Cube. And even though Wilfred's is that 2-minute damage profile, depending on what you're doing, we've seen a lot of Sigil play even recently in Plus, right? Just due to the fact that you have that huge damage profile once every 5 minutes, that huge throughput, the huge extra survivability. It's massive. But it's sort of, with Wilfred's and CDR effects in Sims, it's sort of hard to display the value of every fight duration in a sense. For example, I could run, let's say, a 4.5 minute sim comparatively to a 5, and honestly, Ruby will probably end up, like, Ruby Hymnal will probably beat out Sigil Hymnal, just due to the fact that we get a third Ruby use at 4, and then the sim ends, then the pack dies. But if we go to a 6-minute sim, I would assume there's a big, even larger amount of disparity between this sim here and this, just due to the fight duration. So it's important to keep that in mind. But once again, Ruby and Changeling also aren't a part of Season 4, unless you can obtain them from the actual Mythic 0, which, once again, it takes so much Valor, and if Valor is capped, I mean, honestly, like, is it really even worth it in the first place? I couldn't tell you. Rings here, once again, you have about a 360-ish DPS game with the Mechagon ring combo comparatively to Denathrius ring and Ragalon ring, which is solid. We know this. Rings are good from Mechagon. Farm them up, get them. And the highest overall Destro sim is indeed 2183 if you look at, like, the changeling thing. If you put that aside, we're looking at the highest sim being roughly 21725 right here, with Boss Hymnal, Sigil, and a 5-minute sim playing Mechagon ring set. This is the Wilfred's build once again. So overall, Destro not looking too bad. Madness being ahead by a bit. We know it is. But once again, there's been plenty of fights here where Wilfred's seen play due to that 2-minute profile, due to the big AoE that it can bring, the large, just relevant 2-minute damage profile that you can bring, whether you're playing Inferno or Kata. If you need that 2-minute profile, Wilfred's Destro was one of the best specs in the game for that large, on-demand 2-minute, just snap, let's go kind of damage. Now, I'm going to be honest, I debated leaving Affliction on the video because it's so bad, and it hasn't gotten any tuning, but I can't do that. I enjoy Affliction, even though it's utterly terrible, and I'm sure there's some other Affliction connoisseurs out there somewhere. Utterly terrible right now. Season 4 tuning hasn't happened yet. fingers crossed for some relevancy to AF, but hey, you know, we'll see where it goes. So, the AF sim we ran was playing Malefic Wrath. I didn't run like Wrath Consumption, Synergy Sims. I'm not getting that far in depth with it because the profiles are a pain to compile in the first place. We ended up playing Malefic Wrath, and we ended up playing Unity on boots. We have horns of Demon Star, robes of the Demon Star, gloves of the Demon Star, and legs of the Demon Star. So 4-piece is indeed enabled here. Off the bat, I was not exceptionally excited about AF sims, and well, take a look. So the highest simming trinket combo, this is the zero hymnal zero like baseline unbound changeling proc sims, is actually Ruby and Ooze, which is very interesting. I expected like Titanic Ocular Gland or Hymnal to be a little higher here. Now, I think there is a bit of an issue potentially with these sims. Ooze does sim decently in single target for Affliction. It always has, right? Because damage amps with Shadow's Embrace and things like that also help out a little bit, right? But I'm a little surprised, personally, that Ooze ended up beating out Hymnal. Once again, this is a zero stack Hymnal party group in this sim, however you want to word it. And also keep in mind that Ooze and Ruby and Changeling and even Cube, which is in this sim, will not be available in Season 4 unless they are at a baseline 0 eye level and upgraded with 1,000,000 Valor. But still, a very interesting sim to see off the bat here. So, like, the highest overall sim for AF, trinket-wise, like, with the ones that are obtainable easily, is actually probably this. Hymnal with Sigil. You also have, like, FNT with Shadow over Torment, FNT with Sigil here. So, an interesting way to start the actual sim off. Interesting enough as well, Tovra's Lightning Repository is a very strong equip-based trinket for AF, as we can see. It's a lot of mastery and a lot of intellect, which is really cool to see. This is the one from actual WoD dungeons, right? Yeah, it's from Grimrail Depot, the one nobody wanted, sort of including myself, but either way, it's a lot of mastery, and this trinket gets even better when it comes to 2-target and 3-target and 4-target because of mastery scaling and things like that, right? Now, like I said, I'm not sure if adjustments are going to be made to these trinkets, because these trinkets really aren't around in game now. They were around like in WoD Legion era, but they got rid of the baseline stat 6 for, like, you know, other weird effects and things like that. So it's important to keep an eye on this trinket and see where it goes, because like we said, in a baseline 0 like solo Hymnal party sim, Tovra is sort of ahead of Hymnal here. Now, as far as like comparing other trinkets go, there's not really like the highest Tovra's Sigil sim here is like a 72-ish DPS loss comparatively to like the actual Sigil Hymnal. It's about, well, 72 DPS, but we'll see where that goes. Keep that in mind. But the highest overall sim outside of this one with Ruby is indeed Hymnal and Sigil, from what I can see here. Now, moving on to the 3-person party with Hymnal and still the baseline Sigil, Changeling sim. Still, Ooze and Ruby, which is very, very interesting. But Tovra still being here. But if you look, though, I think, once again, there's not a big difference here in raw damage. But at the same time, the trinkets here are not either, they're not Changeling and they're not Hymnal. So even though I changed the actual like parameters of this sim, adding in 2 more party members for Hymnal, there's really not a difference here in raw damage because Hymnal's still not as strong. Hymnal gains value. It jumps from being, let's see, 19,961, the highest sim, to 20,25, but this is still Hymnal and Ruby. Hymnal and Sigil is 19,982 in this sim comparatively to, let's see, 19,943, so it gains about 40-ish DPS. Tovra still being high here, but it's not until we get to the large, this is your fully stacked Hymnal party, all that kind of stuff, where you see things gain a bit more value. And what gains value is actually Unbound Changeling, which is with the big tri-proc here, the Crit Haste Mastery one. Now, you see Sigil here, but it's dominated by Changeling. It's Changeling, Changeling, Changeling. The highest Hymnal parse, or I guess sim, 2091, which is honestly like sort of comparable to even this one here, being 20, I guess it's about 20k, about 100 DPS increase. So, Hymnal is good for AF. It still looks to be your best equip-based option, because once again, Changeling is not relevant this season, unless they had that Mythic 0 comparison thing in here. But it's really interesting to see. This is why I kept Changeling and these kind of trinkets in this sim. It's very interesting to see where they stack up comparatively to these trinkets, because you can't really obtain this. You can't obtain this. You can't obtain this. But you can still obtain Hymnal. You can get a Sigil. You can get a Shadow over Torment and go from there. So Hymnal does indeed appear to be overall your best equip-based trinket. Tovra drops off a bit here. The highest Tovra sim is, let's see, Tovarus Changeling, Tovarus Sigil, about 19,944. So still not a bad option, but it's about 150-ish DPS behind the highest possible output sim, being Hymnal and First Sigil. And then, where's that? Let me see where Hymnal, I actually didn't see where Hymnal and Shadowed Orb was. Is it even in here? Oh, that's this. It's the baseline one. So this is Hymnal and Shadowed Orb. So basically, Hymnal, Shadowed Orb, Hymnal, Sigil is still a little better than Tovarus, but Tovarus is not terrible in the long run. And then once again, the Mechagon rings for AF look to be about, if we do this, about a 73-ish DPS increase. Not as much as Destro, as we've seen in the Destro sims. Not even as much as Demo, but still worth it. Gem swaps to Haste Mastery and vice versa could change it a little bit, but still worth it in the long run. Still worth picking up, still a solid option. And the highest overall Malefic Wrath sim is about 20,578 DPS from what I've seen. World Killer Iris does indeed beat out. I didn't even add a socket to this, sort of forgot. World Killer Iris does indeed beat out Interplanar Keystone, which is the Kel'Thuzad neck. Solid all-around option. So, like I said, all these sims, there's a lot of consistency between them all. They're all basically playing a very similar gear set, and a lot of that is just influenced from the final bosses all having a higher eye level. There might be a pair of, let's say a cloak somewhere as Haste Mastery. It's a little better for Demo or better for Destro or AF because it's, statted differently or whatever. And that's the case. You can run those sims on your own and figure it out on your own time, right? Whenever the things get live, things get sorted out. But as of right now, there is a very, very small, probably not really much at all, wiggle room as far as BIS gearing is concerned. You have what is more or less a BIS gear list from what I can see, and there's really not a whole lot of variance there. So yeah, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope the video answered the questions you might have had about Season 4 gearing, trinkets, Mechagon rings, BIS gear, and things like that in general. Now, like I said, I expected Hymnal to be pretty strong. It is pretty strong. Depending on what I get drop-wise from Castle and things, it very well might be the first item I buy, depending on how many other people in the guild have Hymnals, and then go from there. But things like Antumbra, World Killer Iris, other relevant effects, Shadowed Orb Torment, for example, are also solid options and potentially worth targeting depending on what happens with gearing once Blizz, clarifies on legendaries and tier gear and trinkets from WoD raids. Things could change a good bit. If they do, I'll end up making a video on it. Chances are pretty high. I'll probably end up making a spreadsheet for Season 4 as well. Like I do for 9.0, 9.1, 9.2. I most likely will have the tier 3 Felgar Patreon rank having early access to that again as well. If you're interested, should be a link up to here and down below. But yeah, I'm excited for S4. I'm pretty pumped for it. I think it's gonna be a good season. I'm excited to run Nathria again. I don't think anybody in the world wants to run SOD again, but we'll figure that out. And I do think the dungeons are pretty cool. We've run most of them on PTR. Iron Docks was insane. Grimrail was insane in a different way, but we'll see where it goes. So thanks for watching, guys. Any questions, drop them down in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. Any week course, add-ons, and profiles, once again, link down below to my Twitch, where I stream 5 to 6 days a week. Grab them all for free there. Come by, hang out. Ask any questions anytime. Feel free to do so. Thanks for watching, dudes, and I'll catch you all again soon on stream. Peace.